31. An uneventful trip and reminiscing. We drove until noon, taking a few short breaks along the way. Although it was mostly wasteland outside of town, we discovered there were still ways to find your bearings. Traces of human habitation served as signposts. I figured if we pushed on until nightfall, stopped to sleep, and then set out in the morning again, we would reach under Junon by evening. At least, that was the vague plan I dreamed up as I drove. The driving wasn't easy, not by a long shot. There was more dust and dirt in the air out here, and to protect myself, I copied Kyrie by tying a handkerchief around my face underneath the goggles. At first, we were excited and kept pointing out new sights to each other, but between the handkerchiefs and the wind, we ended up having to shout just to be heard, and every conversation devolved into, "Huh?" and "What did you say?" Until finally, we gave up. So instead, Kyrie would tap my shoulder or poke my arm when she wanted me to see something, and I did the same, which meant I deliberately started searching for interesting scenery for an excuse to touch her. Evan Townsend, get a damn hold of yourself. She shouted something. "Huh? I'm hungry." Right. Come to think of it, I was too. I stopped the car and pulled down my handkerchief. "Want to have Merle's bread?" "Not very scenic," said Kyrie, unimpressed. Green grass, pale brown patches of dry earth, blue sky, and white clouds. Pretty much the same four colors we've been looking at all morning. "Whatever," she sighed, opening the bundle. She ripped off a piece of the loaf and shoved it into her mouth. "Hey, this is good." Then she tore off nearly half and handed the rest to me. I took a bite straight from the loaf. "It's sweet, like from a fancy bakery." "Yeah. You used to find this kind of sweet bread up on the plate and nowhere else. Maybe Merle was once a topsider." I tried to imagine the course her life must have taken, recalling the photo I found at Corneo's. But it wasn't a pleasant thing to dwell on. At least she was going to be okay now. She was radiant when she was with Leslie. "Well, let's ask her for the recipe," I said. "Yeah, sure, I don't really bake though." Then I remembered Leslie mentioning Kyrie's fear of fire. "That's okay, it'll be my job." "Oh, really? Thanks." Kyrie popped another chunk of bread into her mouth, looking into the distance as she savored it. Maybe she saw her future there. I took a bite myself and stared ahead. A hint of a road stretched on through the wild grassland. I'd have to be careful not to lose track of it. "Want to get going?" I said. "Sure." In the passenger seat, Kyrie slapped a magazine into one of the machine guns and then pulled it out again. Over and over. "Simple enough," she said. Occasionally, she took aim straight ahead, pretending to fire. "Why don't you try it for real?" I asked. After some hesitation, she leaned forward and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. "It doesn't work." She turned around and set the gun in the back seat. Then snatched up the other one and pushed in the magazine. She pulled the trigger. "This one's busted too." Kyrie slumped back into the seat in dismay. We'd come this far without worrying about monsters, believing we were properly armed. If we couldn't use the guns, we had no way to defend ourselves. Still, it wouldn't help for both of us to lose our cool. "It's fine. I still have Rufus Shimmer's gun." I took the pistol from my jacket pocket and passed it to Kyrie. "But I gave this to Dr. Drake. He didn't want to take the payment. Why not?" It was a rather long story to shout into the wind. "I'll tell you later." Kyrie seemed to accept this. She aimed down the road and set her finger on the trigger. The car bounced, her hand every which way. She'd never hit a target. I was certain. "Please let the monsters keep their distance," I prayed. Finally, the sun began to sink, and I began hunting for a place to stop for the night. Not that there was anything around besides the empty grassland. We'd be sleeping in the car. I pulled over into the shelter of a rocky outcropping and killed the engine. I had no reason to think that having rocks on one side would make us safer, but it would make things feel a little more normal, for me at least. I did have a habit of wedging myself against the wall as I slept. Let's call it a night here. "You think we'll be okay?" Figuring I would manage as long as I had the car fuel to make it go. I hadn't bothered to make any other preparations, not even food. I wasn't sure how to respond to the question. "Why don't I drive?" said Kyrie. "Looks easier to handle than the Turk's truck, like a toy almost." It was easy to handle, but my pride was still a little wounded. "I'll drive through the night and you can sleep. Then we'll switch in the morning. What do you think?" "Okay," I replied. although it crossed my mind that we should do it the other way around. While I was wondering how to bring it up, she climbed out and came around to the driver's side. So I gave up and moved over. So first you have to... Shh. Kyrie shushed me and turned the key in the ignition. The engine rumbled to life. On your left, there's the... I said shh. Looking around the steering wheel, she found the parking brake and released it, and pressed down on the accelerator. Like I said, pretty easy. Out here it is with no pedestrians, I said. In the plaza and edge. Well, we're not going there, so no worries. Then she braked. Okay, get in the back. I'm fine here. I know, but sleep would do more for you than harping on my driving, dummy. Kyrie had already reduced the back seat to the same state as her room. I shoved some clothes out of the way and stretched out with my head on the passenger side so I could watch her drive. As she took us through the nighttime wilderness, I kept seeing things she was doing wrong, but I bit down on my tongue and kept them to myself. Go to sleep, said Kyrie. All right. Cradling the useless machine gun, I closed my eyes. After a little while, she spoke up again. Hey, why did you leave Midgar at night? Wouldn't daytime have made more sense? I didn't know what she was talking about. Huh? When? You know, when we first met. The headlights just made me remember. Oh, then. Sorry, I shouldn't try to talk to you now, huh? Go to sleep, okay? I couldn't keep the memory at bay anymore. 2 years ago, after the Lifestream blasted Meteor away, I spent a week dragging my feet, hoping against hope that my mother might come home. But she didn't, despite all the worrying I did about her, and it infuriated me in the most selfish of ways. I'd heard the rumors that the plate would collapse. I knew about the advisories to evacuate. All the neighbors left and Midgar became a ghost town, haunted by the fading memory of its old hustle and bustle. On the 5th day, I ate the last of the food without running water I'd been drinking from the toilet tank. Even for a state of emergency, this was pretty desperate. I'd only drink when I couldn't take the thirst anymore, but now, even the water was almost gone. Time to leave the house. I went to bed that night with my mind made up to go out the next day, but in the morning, I started thinking about my mom again. My resolve crumbled in spite of my hunger. Okay, not today. I'll go tomorrow. Doesn't have to be for good. I can come back any time, I told myself. So, it was on the 7th day, when I finally decided to step outside. I was planning on only a short foray, so I just shoved a few things into my birthday satchel. Put it off till 2 in the afternoon, and then the time my mom used to stop at home and ate on her lunch break from the cafe job. That'll never happen again, I thought, and yet, still I dawdled. I picked up the book that was close at hand and rifled through the pages, the first volume of Escape from Wutai, which I'd read several times since my mom left. When I got to the part where the jackass died, I looked up and noticed the room was dim. It was already evening. I'd missed yet another chance. I'll go tomorrow, I thought, but my stomach rumbled in protest at my flimsy resolve. Worse than hunger, though, was thirst. I had the last of the water from the toilet tank in a bottle. Once I drank that, there'd be nothing left. So I went outside in the darkness. I wandered around with a flashlight, racking my brain for a public place that might have potable water. There were plenty of abandoned houses, so it occurred to me to try some B&E. But if we didn't have any running water, no one else would either. And there was no way I would force myself to drink out of someone else's toilet. That was when I met her. She was sitting down on the side of the street, her legs stretched out in a pair of cream-colored shorts. Her right knee was bloody. She shielded her eyes against the flashlight beam. Sorry, I flicked off the flashlight, meaning to keep walking. Are you from around here? She said. Yeah? Our first conversation, very memorable. Do you have any water? She asked. I should clean this scrape. Yeah, here. Shifting closer to her in the dark street, I took the water bottle from my bag and handed it to her. Thank you. She looked up at me as she removed the lid. This isn't your last, is it? A smile was in her large eyes and playing on her soft lips, lighting up a delicate face framed by long, straight black hair. For a second, I forgot about everything else. Do you mind if I use half? She said. No, take whatever you need. Thanks. She poured a little onto her hand and started scrubbing at the wound. I just have to get the dirt out. Right. There, now it's good. It stopped bleeding. She got up, but as soon as she stepped forward onto her right leg, She yelped in pain and staggered toward me. To be precise, I moved quickly to catch her. It still hurts. Want me to carry you? What I should have done was offered her my arm to lean on, but no, I literally offered to carry her. I couldn't ask that of you, she began tentatively. Most girls wouldn't want a guy they'd just met to carry them simply because of a scraped leg, but that hadn't even entered my mind. Well, on second thought, maybe I will take you up on the offer. She tried to hobble around behind me, and I quickly turned my back to her. Thanks, she said. I crouched down a bit and felt her hands on my shoulders, then her weight on my hips and her soft body against my back. Before I could think too much, I got my arms under her bare legs. Where do you need to go? I asked, determined to act casual. The slums. Okay, I accepted, although that wasn't what I'd expected. She was so lightly dressed I'd assumed she was from the neighborhood. Getting out of Midgar? Yeah, that's the plan. Me too. That was probably when I actually decided to leave the plate. Funny how life forces your decisions like that. Huh? You're evacuating at night? She remarked. Seems like a weird time to pull up stakes. Well, you're out here too. I guess so. I'm Evan Townsend, by the way. What's your name? Muriel Dudley. How many lies did that make between us already? Of course, I had no reason to doubt her word at the time. Hey, Evan. The slums are pretty far. Tell me if you get tired, okay? You shouldn't push yourself too hard. Got it. Do you mind if I do the kid thing and drape myself over you? I know. It'll make it easier for both of us, I think. You're probably right, I had to agree, and then her slender arms wrapped around my neck. I found I couldn't hold my flashlight steady. It took forever, but we made it all the way to the station like that. There was a surprising number of people there, most of them hesitating before stepping onto the train tracks to climb down to the slums. Perhaps they were reluctant to go, knowing that they'd never be back. Not me, though. I marched right onto the stairs that led down from the platform. I wanted the girl on my back to think I was tougher than the others. One careful step at a time, we descended along the tracks that spiraled around Midgar's central pillar. It was hard to guess how long I'd have to keep this up. She kept urging me to take a break, insisting she could probably walk now, but I refused, like the vain and stubborn kid I was. Hey, Evan, can I take your bag? I'm fine. I mean, it keeps hitting my leg. Oh, sorry, I didn't notice. Here, I'll get it. She deftly lifted the shoulder strap over my head. I lost count of how many times I thought my legs would buckle under me. After all the agonizing over whether to even step out of the house. In the end, I'd left home on a total whim. I was starting to regret it now, but I didn't stop. Eventually, we made it all the way down the tracks and arrived at the station in the slums. The place was teeming with plate evacuees who had nowhere to go. An unfamiliar stench hung in the air, which I soon realized came from burning flesh. Not far away, they were cremating the bodies of people who had died from the geostigma, a nameless mystery disease at the time. Thank you, said Muriel, or Kyrie, as she hopped down from my back. Feeling better? Maybe we should have taken turns carrying each other, I joked. Did you hear that? Kyrie pointed behind me. Someone's calling your name. Evan sounded like a lady's voice. Startled, I looked behind me for the person calling out. Where? I scanned the crowd for Mom. A lady calling my name? It would have to be her. Muriel, where did it come from? There was no answer. I turned to see her running away, my bag bouncing against her back. I didn't understand. The moment I took a step, my knees turned to soggy noodles and collapsed beneath me. As I fell, I finally clued into what was happening. I couldn't really hold it against her, though. I was more upset with myself for being such a sucker. World's biggest idiot. That's me. Hey, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Sick? A big bearded man was standing over me. It had been about half a day since I made it to the slums, and I'd been huddled in a ball the entire time. No, I'm fine. Just resting. My stomach growled. The big man laughed, and something tapped the end of my nose. You came down from the plate, huh? Eat that and get going. You gotta learn how we do things around here. Forget about your old topside life. Ain't nobody around to look after house cats, so you won't make it unless you go feral. I stared at the chocolate bar in my lap and listened to the gruff man's lecture. I thought about Jet. My mother had taken care of me just like we took care of our house cat. I thought how weird it was that I'd been worrying about him ever since he'd gone feral. Tears welled in my eyes. I squeezed them shut, and when I opened them again, the chocolate bar was gone. Evan? It was the girl who'd suckered me. She had to come back now? I looked up at her from the dirt and saw the bandage on her knee. Apparently the scrape had been real. Come with me. She pulled me to my feet. I followed her through the slums. The territory was entirely new to me, but I didn't have the energy to take in the sights. She kept glancing back and apologizing, and finally she confessed that it was a con called piggyback mugging. She would pretend to be hurt, have someone carry her, and once they were exhausted, hold a knife to their throat and demand their valuables. At that point, the mark didn't have the strength to resist. She mostly targeted out-of-shape middle-aged men, she explained. But when I showed up and actually offered to carry her, it was too tempting. Really, I was just dumb enough to be the perfect victim. I didn't actually go up there to pull any cons, she said. My friend told me that the plate was deserted, so I was on smash and grab. But then I got hurt, and you were nice to me. The whole time I was thinking I should stop. I'm sorry. The only consolation was that at least she hadn't pulled the knife on me. Why did you come back? My grandma yelled at me. At length, we came to the house that would later become the office of Muriel's Investigation Services. Wooden planks were slapped together to form walls, and the windows were plastic rather than glass, and too dirty to see through. It was the picture of poverty, the confirmation of everything I'd imagined about home in the slums. My companion opened the shabby door and led me into the cramped living room, but inside the cream-colored fabric on the walls made the interior more comforting than the outside might suggest. And against the wall, to the right, there was an extravagant glass-doored cabinet full of fine porcelain dolls. Did you steal those? I asked. She lowered her eyes. That was payback enough. A door to the back room opened, and a short, stout old woman stepped out. She smiled sweetly and gave me a hug. I'm so sorry. I hope you can forgive my granddaughter. I told her to observe before she picks a mark, and usually she listens, but she says she was tired and not thinking straight. Anyway, I really am sorry. As she chattered away, she held out my shoulder bag. You'll be wanting this back. Why don't you make sure everything's there? I took my bag and did as she said. Although I couldn't actually remember what I'd shoved in there in the first place, so it was a surprise when I found everything I took out was a memento of my mother. A book of hers, a handkerchief, pictures of us. That must be your mother in the photos, said the old woman. It is, I replied. Is she well? No. You see, I thought as much. I can't believe you snatched a bereaved child's heirlooms. That con is for dirty old men who just want an excuse to grope your thighs. I flinched in discomfort. Kyrie is very sorry, she said to me. Kyrie? Yeah, that's my real name, Kyrie said. Kyrie Cannon. You must let us make it up to you, dear, her grandmother insisted. In our line of work, we've got to own up to it when we do something wrong, or we'll be monsters in no time. What do you say? Can you give us another chance? The old woman clasped her hands together during her entreaty. Whatever made up her standards for right and wrong, they were beyond me, and I couldn't help smiling. Thank you, Evan. She'd misinterpreted my reaction, but what the heck? Kyrie was smiling too. It was the third night of my stay with Kyrie and Grandma Muriel, when Kyrie came dashing out home from a job. Look at this, she cried, slapping 2 bills on the table. And who was the victim? Asked her grandmother. There was no victim, she crowed. I saw Fabio today, and he told me he had work for me that paid pretty well, so I went with him to the giant junk pile in the Sector 7 slums. Grandma Muriel nodded. Giant junk pile? I tried to imagine what that might look like. This old guy who used to live topside in Sector 7, he was going for something and he happened to know Fabio, so he asked him to help. And he said there'd be a reward, a big one, so Fabio said, yeah, we'll find it for sure, and he got Leslie, and Leslie got some other people. About 6 of us? It took all day, near enough, but we found it, a big strongbox. The old man was ecstatic and paid us in cash. This is my cut. That much, said Grandma Muriel, after being split 6 ways? Pretty good haul, huh? And it felt good, too. I mean, I actually made someone happy for a change. That was the beginning of Muriel's investigative services. Kyrie invited me on board right away from the get-go, though I turned her down at first. I accepted, only when I made her promise I could quit whenever I felt like it. The next day, I borrowed a large sack from Kyrie and ventured back to Midgar. It was a long and unpleasant climb up the train tracks, but I didn't want to leave the house the way it was. Of course, I was thinking of my mom too. But when I arrived, the place had been turned upside down. Looters must have paid a visit. Fearing the worst, I checked the hiding place in the ceiling. The money was still there. After that, I assessed the damage. The telephone and TV were gone, and probably more than that, but I was already losing interest in the missing stuff. The mess bothered me more than the burglary itself. Muttering curses against the thieves, I straightened everything out and boarded up the broken window with slats from the ceiling. Then finally, I began the process of choosing what to save from the house I'd lived in all my life. Every single item had memories attached to it. How could I pick just a handful? In the end, though, all I brought with me was the money and some clothes. I wasn't really leaving home after all, just stepping out for a while. As long as the train tracks stood, I could go back whenever I wanted. The last thing I did was to leave a note for my mom. I didn't really know where I would end up, and I soon gave up trying to write directions with my temporary lodgings at Kyrie's place. So instead, I just wrote that I would be at the station in the slums at noon every day for an hour. With that, I bid farewell to the plate. Back in the slums, Kyrie was waiting for me at the station along with two other guys around our age. One of them was giving me a once-over as he pushed back his grayish-pale hair, and the other, small and round, was chuckling and watching me through his thick glasses. I'd heard their names, Leslie and Fabio. Kyrie introduced them as the other founding members of her private investigation firm. Listening to the easy conversation of these longtime associates, I had a sharp sense of being in the wrong place. The need to fit in and my misgivings about living in the slums had me on edge, jumpy as a feral cat. "I know a place that's available," said Fabio. "Not exactly upscale, though. Might be too rough for a topsider." "You don't know me. I might be a topsider, but I've had it rough too." Kyrie and Fabio raised their eyebrows, and Leslie turned away as if something had caught his interest on the ground. Now that I think about it, he was probably fighting the urge to laugh in my face. Thus began my life in the slums. The neighborhood where Fabio found me a room was as crappy as he promised, but Leslie made a point of introducing me to the mean-looking neighbors. And once I actually started living there, no one gave me any grief. Now, of course, I know that was all thanks to Leslie putting in the word on my behalf. Our new business did better than any of us had expected. The gangs of orphans working for small change and sweets grabbed a lot of the lost items market, so we ended up focusing on the missing persons cases. We took assignments from the bewildered people milling around the station, collecting payment for finding their friends and family. In many cases, the people they were looking for were just fairly close by, which made the job easier. The refugees who came down from the plate didn't stray very far. I discovered I was fairly good at finding clients. I'd look for the better-dressed people and just go right up to them. Everyone had somebody that they wanted to find, whether they were friends or family or neighbors. Striking up a conversation with the complete strangers wasn't fun, but our survival depended on it. So I drew on hidden reserves of courage and found the way to get by. As for the noon visits to the station that I promised in my letter to my mom, they'd lasted 3 whole days. Trying to secure my own place in the world quickly took over everything. By the time the first month was over, I'd gone fully feral. 32. The Girl on Chocobo Back. It was still dark when I woke up with a start. The car was stopped, the engine off, and Kyrie was asleep with her head lolling against the passenger seat, in a position that made my neck hurt just looking at her. I got up slowly, trying not to bump into the front seats. She woke up anyway. "My neck," she groaned, discovering that she couldn't move her head. I reached into the front and lifted her head up for her. "Are you okay?" She righted herself, tried to loosen her kink. "Sorry, I got sleepy and..." "Shh." I hushed her mid-sentence, pointing ahead. "Oh." There in the moonlit field, about 20 yards away, was our first real-life chocobo. It looked back at us drowsily. On its back was a petite girl watching us. I picked up the machine gun by my feet. So far, I knew the yellow flightless birds were not dangerous animals. The girl didn't seem hostile either, but you can never be too careful. Besides, whatever I knew might not be all that reliable. I couldn't even tell how a girl I'd known for 2 years felt about me. "What are you doing?" said Kyrie. "I got this." As long as I had a gun, I'd manage. I quietly opened the door and climbed out, focused on the girl. "It doesn't work, remember?" she whispered when I had one foot on the ground. Actually, I hadn't remembered, but it was too late to turn back now. I got out and stood beside the car and slowly took aim. "Stay away," I shouted. But instead, the massive chocobo started coming closer, menacingly. I flinched as it bore down on me, and it occurred to me that the beak like that could crush a human skull without much effort. I said, "Stay away." I took a step back. Kyrie got out of the car and moved behind me. "Are you stupid?" the girl scolded, bringing the chocobo up close with a skillful flick of reins. I wanted to keep backing away, but with Kyrie behind me, I had to stand my ground. "Maybe you're stupid," Kyrie snapped. "What kind of retort is that?" I thought. "Great comeback," the girl said with a snort. "Anyway, is it true there's medicine for geostigma now?" "Huh?" Without thinking, I lowered the gun. "That's better. You can't just go pointing guns at people without a good reason. It's the law of the wild or something. So anyway, the medicine, does it exist? I've only heard rumors." "They have a drug that helps with the pain," I replied, trying to hide my chagrin. "It's not a cure, though. Where can I buy it?" "It's not on the market yet. I think the WRO is going to distribute it." "Distribute it? Like for free?" "Yeah, probably." "Oh wow, thanks for the info." After a few more happy thank yous, she rode away. Or started to, then instead circled around again. "By the way, you have to flip the safety off if you want to actually fire your gun. Everyone knows that." She giggled and rode off for real. "Who the heck was she?" Kyrie murmured, although there was no way to ask now. She so much out there was beyond our ken, edge and Midgar, above or below the plate. We're only tiny slices of the vast world. "So, what did she mean by safety?" I examined the machine gun. Near the trigger on the barrel, I found a small sliding button. It was the only button on the gun apart from the magazine released. I tried sliding it. Click! Put the gun to my shoulder and pulled the trigger, and the gun responded with a sharp rat-a-tat and a series of muzzle flashes. "Whoa!" Kyrie and I exclaimed in unison. I hadn't been ready for the recoil, and my shoulder was smarting from the impact. Several empty shell cases lay at my feet. "So what are the laws of the wild?" Kyrie mused as she climbed back into the passenger seat. "We know one of them, I guess. Don't point guns at things without good reason." "Doesn't it drive you nuts getting laughed at for not knowing things?" "Yup. It had happened to me daily when I first arrived at the slums." She remembered too, apparently. "Sorry." "That's okay. After a certain point, it just pushes me to get stronger. Or I would have liked to believe. That hadn't been my experience so far. The shame had only pushed me to be a liar. It was nearly dawn. I flicked off the headlights and started the car. "You get some more sleep, Kyrie. We can switch before noon." "If you say so," she said, her voice tired and thin, and she went to climb into the back seat. She seemed to think she could squeeze through the gap between the driver and passenger seats. She got her upper half through okay, but then got her hips stuck. For a few seconds, she sat there barely daring to breathe, while her thighs wiggled inches from my face. Finally, she turned herself at an angle and achieved her goal. "Sleep tight." "I'll try." Kyrie fell asleep awfully fast for someone so reluctant to rest. And as I watched her in the rearview mirror from time to time as I drove, I was seriously glad she'd come with me. Someone with a good tolerance for solitude might have considered her a burden, but that wasn't me. Loneliness always got to me, like those days I spent in Midgar waiting for my mom. Then suddenly, I remembered another time I'd felt that way. It was when I was little, right after the surgery. My mom had overworked herself, collapsed, and for a few days I was completely alone. I was still at the hospital, so I had the nurses and doctors, but to 5-year-old me, they were just mysterious strangers who'd cut me open and hurt me. No one could protect me but my mom, and she wasn't there. I blubbered and cried the entire time. I didn't want the nurses to see me cry, so whenever anyone would approach, I'd pull the blankets over my head and try to hold my breath. Apparently there's something wrong with his head. They said his mother fainted when she heard, "Shh, don't talk like that in front of patients." Wait, what was that memory from? It must have been the nurses talking when I pretended to be asleep, but what did it mean? My mother fainted? I thought she just overworked herself. I slammed on the brakes. What's going on? Kyrie said sleepily. Oh wow. Is that what you wanted me to see? I didn't know what had her excited until I turned around and saw her with her nose to the window, looking out over the open grasslands. A few dozen yards away was a large pond, or maybe it was a lake. I couldn't really tell. Whatever you called it, it was as big as Edge's Central Plaza, and sparkling in the morning sun. I'd never seen so much water in one place. The sight of it chased from my mind the actual reason I'd stopped the car. Let's go check it out. Without waiting for a reply, Kyrie jumped out of the car and dashed down the grassy slope towards the water's edge. Nothing else was out there, but she abruptly stopped and turned back. Will you bring one of the machine guns? Can't be too careful. Yeah, good idea. I got out and opened the back to get the machine gun, and I noticed that the pistol had fallen behind the passenger seat. The vehicle was full of hazards. I leaned in to pick it up, then grabbed my satchel and Kyrie's backpack. After putting the pistol in mine, I brought both bags with me. They were full of valuables, after all. Evan, she called in the sheer delight. She was crouched down, plunging her hands into the water. This is amazing. The water's so clear, it's almost freaky. Then she jumped up and came running back toward me. I'm gonna change. Don't look in the car until I say, okay? Huh? Go over to the water. You can see fish and everything. Okay? I didn't understand what she was up to, but I headed down the slope to the edge of the pool. I could see grass waving in translucent water and tiny fish darting around, nibbling at it. I'd only ever seen things like this in pictures or videos, but this was real. I could touch it. I set down the gun and dipped my hands in the water like Kyrie had. It was pleasantly cool. There was a shout from behind me. Here I come! I hadn't even turned my head when Kyrie streaked by me in an orange bathing suit and splashed into the pond. She kept wading out onto the deeper water, and when it was above her chest, she looked back at me. Come on in. No, I'm good. We can catch fish to eat. She brought her face close to the surface and looked in. Oh, there are bigger ones over here. Even while admitting my total ignorance of all things fish-related, I was pretty sure none of us were dumb enough to catch with our bare hands. I don't have a bait whistle. So, just take off your shirt. Besides, we both need a bath, right? Kyrie stretched out one arm and started scrubbing herself with her other hand. She laughed at me. Quit being such a wet blanket. Fine, I mumbled, and I stripped to my waist. Kyrie was chasing a fish. She and Leslie and Fabio were always trying to goad me into doing stuff. Why not just go with it? And I was always walking in shame, but not this time. Nope. I was gonna have fun whether I liked it or not. Here I come, Kyrie. Woohoo!